On the 5th of April of this last year, I was TDY to Hill Air Force Base with Dan Osborne, Dano. We were up there to visit some of our airmen that are stationed there, and we were up there to visit some of our support agencies that help us with civilian personnel. And before I walked out my hotel front door, I got a call from a gentleman named Tom. Tom is the older brother of my best friend growing up named Jim, and Tom shared with me on that early April morning that Jim had died by suicide. Of course, news like that rocks your world. A flow of emotions of various types flows through, and you're numb, and frankly, I carried through with the rest of my activities on that day, mostly numb, and there's still a little part of me that continues to be numb as a result of that today. I had talked to Jim 3 days prior to that on the phone. He and I hadn't seen each other for about 7.5 years, but we talked on occasion, and I knew that Jim was going through some challenges in his life, but he didn't let on during that hour or so long conversation the extent to which he was struggling. In fact, at the very end of that talk, for the last 15 minutes or so, we planned a very hope-filled activity to get together, me and my son, and him and his son, to go fishing on the Deschutes River in Central Oregon this coming weekend, actually. And then something happened in those next 3 days that sapped the hope out of Jim's life, and he made that very permanent decision. I flew up to the Portland area a week later to be a part of that memorial service. I had the privilege to speak at his memorial, and hopefully my words were encouraging to the group that was assembled there. But I couldn't stop thinking, why didn't Jim reach out to just one person? Because I found out that he didn't. Why didn't he reach out to just one person that was assembled there, the hundreds of people at his memorial? Why didn't he reach out to just one? That same day, I received a call from our command post. I got a note from one of our commanders that shared the story with me of one of our airmen here at Edwards, who in a very dark time in his life, at around midnight at the Rite Aid parking lot in Rosamond, picked up the phone and called 911 on himself and got the help that he needed. I am so proud of that airman who did reach out to just one, and the result couldn't be more starkly contrasted with the situation of my friend Jim. I'm always so proud of our airmen who have the strength when their well is dry, when their tank is empty, to go reach out to just one. Maybe a first sergeant, maybe walk into the door of a chaplain or mental health, or reach out to a frontline supervisor, or talk to a friend or a dorm mate or a neighbor or a colleague. That is strength, and unfortunately, Jim, for whatever reason, there in early April, didn't have the strength to do what that young airman did in the Rite Aid parking lot at midnight in Rosamond. A couple of months ago, I read an article in the Washington Post. It was a story about a small town just outside of Portland called Newburgh in Oregon, and a lady named Amy Wolf. And in Newburgh, they had an epidemic of those dying by suicide. 6 students in that school district in the previous year, and 6 additional attempts in the previous 2 weeks. Amy was just a professional in that town, and she didn't know what she could do, but she realized that she needed to do something. And so she had some small yard signs printed to put in her yard and to put in the yards of those in that community in Newburgh. And they said things like, "You matter, you're worthy of love, and don't give up." In fact, those signs went viral, Amy's signs, and at last count, she sold about 300,000 of those at cost, not just to the citizens of Newburgh, but to folks spread around the country and around the world, because this is a serious problem, not just in the United States Air Force, but throughout our community and throughout society. I like the 4 pillars of resilience that we preach in the United States Air Force: social, spiritual, physical, and mental. There's a lot of values in those and a lot of importance in making sure that in the good times we build up those elements of our character and our support network. So when the bad times come, when the storms come and the rains fall and the winds blow, we've got a foundation we can rely upon. But I think there's something missing in those 4 pillars because they focus too much on the individual and not enough on the community. And there's a vital part of solving this very difficult problem, which rests not with the individual that's going through the very difficult situations and the dark times in their lives, but there's a large piece of the solution to this problem that rests on all of our shoulders. In our community, we need to build up the networks of interconnectedness that everybody can rely on in the good times and the bad times. We need to build up the community resources where we don't need to post signs around our neighborhoods, but on our faces and in our demeanor, we are telling people, you matter, you're worthy of love, and don't give up. In the Wing Front Office, we talk a lot about improving quality of life initiatives. All of those things are important. But there's something more important than individual quality of life, and it's community quality of life. And a lot of the things we're working on, while they provide individual quality of life, are really intended to build up this community and find ways to connect people with other people as an important piece of this very difficult challenge. Strong family dinners, community building. Dorm dinners, community building. Operation Beat the Heat, the dorm block party, community building. Opening up a wing stop, community building. A thriving chapel program, community building. Starting ballet and gymnastics lessons for our kids, community building. An indoor playground in the bowling alley, community building. Uber and Uber Eats and other eating establishment opportunities on base, all of those things, while they improve individual quality of life, are designed to tie people together and to improve this community at Edwards. Newberg, Oregon isn't very far away from Portland, where my buddy died. And I wish in those last few moments of his life, he would have driven by one of Amy Wolf's signs. And I wish he would have seen that sign that said, you matter, or that you're worthy of love, or don't give up. And I wish that that would have been a trigger that would have caused him to reach out to just one. Similarly, I wish in those last few moments of his life that he would have walked past somebody that by their demeanor and how they treated him, a kind word, a kind smile, a warm handshake, would have told him that he mattered, or that he was worthy of love, or that he shouldn't give up. And again, I'm not suggesting that we need to reach out to Amy Wolf and buy several hundred of those signs here at Edwards, but I want us to be a community that doesn't just preach the pillars of resilience, but that intertwines with one another and builds relationships. So by our interactions with our colleagues and our neighbors and our friends, we are telling them constantly, you matter, you're worthy of love, don't give up.